makes it entertaining. And I'm hoping that there's one episode where we just really, really, really go hard on a movie that like one of us just is so crazy in love with, and the other one's like, I hated it, and it's like, don't you say that about my family.
That might be tonight. We'll see. I mean,
you think so?
Maybe. Do you want to find out?
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That's the podcast that explores itself, explores ourselves, and explores the self in general. My name is Ty. I will be your host.
And I am the walking social experiment known as distance.
And tonight is the Metacast movie show about Into the Wild. Into the Wild is a 2007 biographical drama. It was directed by Sean Penn, screenplayed by Sean Penn, based on Into the Wild by John Krakauer.
It stars Emile Hirsch, Marcia Gay Harden, William Hurt, and Jenna Malone.
The budget for this movie was $20 million, with a box office take of $56.8 million.
The tomato meter rating was 83%, with an audience score of 89%.
So, as we just talked about, it's an adaptation of a 1996 nonfiction book with the same title, and it tells the story of Christopher McCandless, or Alexander Supertramp, and as he attempts to reject modern society and escape into the Alaskan wilderness. This movie is, I think it's really, really well done. I enjoyed, all the performances in it I think are great. We just talked about before this, I didn't know it was written and directed by Sean Penn until literally this week, but I thought that was kind of interesting. There's some parts of it that kind of rub me the wrong way. I feel like, specifically there's like almost a religious message in a few scenes that I kind of don't really like. I think, you know me not really being too much of a religious guy, but, when it comes down to it, this movie as a whole, as a piece of film, I think it was great. I enjoyed it in 2007 when I first saw it, and I still enjoy it now, 13 years later. I don't enjoy that scene with the spider. But no, I love this movie. So as far as it comes to giving it a verdict, should you watch, I have to give this one a yes. I love this movie. I cannot recommend it more. It is similar to, I liken it to other movies, kind of like Requiem for a Dream, where it's a tough watch. It's not necessary. It's a great movie, but it doesn't necessarily leave you feeling uplifted. So I don't know if it's, as far as like, should you watch it? Yes, maybe not every week, or, it may not be a movie you return to a lot, but I do think at least once, I think people should see it.
Well, yeah, for me, the question is, should you watch it? And, I didn't love the movie. There's actually a lot of stuff in it that I thought was kind of naive. I mostly I'm the only coming of age movies I like are ones that I watched when I was coming of age.
Gotcha.
So I picked Elizabethtown a few weeks ago because that's one that I was watching when I was like in my late teens, early 20s. And so it was one that kind of, and I think this movie is about the same for you. That it was one that you watched the first time around that time. So for me, whether or not I love the movie doesn't really affect if I think people should watch it, because I think there's a lot of people that would get a whole lot out of this movie. And I think there's a lot of stuff that would make people think about things that they hadn't before. So for this, I'm gonna say yes, you should watch it. Nice. But it's because I know that I still, even though I didn't love it, I still feel like I got something out of it. I wouldn't choose to watch it again, mainly because, yes, it is a hard watch.
And I would say, off of one thing you were saying, I think that a lot of the naive things are on purpose and kind of show that this movie almost, I'm going to say something that's really weird, but then I think when I flesh it out, it'll make sense. This movie reminds me a lot of South Park. The reason why is because it does a really good job of showing how silly both sides of an argument are. And I think South Park does that really well, and I think this movie, kind of the two sides of the debate, kind of that it's showing, it shows both sides really well, and then it shows the silliness and the hypocrisy that both sides have.
Okay. Yeah. Now that you got there, I get it. Okay. I was like South Park.
Yeah,
What?
yeah.
Which is the reason why I preface it. When I flush it out, I was like, okay, let him flush it out. So yeah, I mean, now that you explain it, yeah, I think I think that's true to some degree. And I recognize that this is the actual perspective of a person that was young at the time and probably freshly out of college and somewhat idealistic.
Yeah.
So, and when you're making a movie about someone that existed, sometimes you don't have a choice, especially if you want to be true to the individual, especially when you have a journal or something to go by.
Exactly. Yeah. You get to take some liberties, but I mean, you're telling a story that's already been written.
So, can we spoil shit now?
Oh yeah, sure. Let's get into it. Yeah.
So in my notes, I want to skim through these and mention 2 different things that I remarked about just to start out with. And I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, but this really affected me not loving the movie.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find the last one, because I don't even know where this goes. So I in my notes, no joke, I put Pearl Jam, then I put more Pearl Jam, and then I put, I'm getting really tired of hearing Eddie Vedder's voice. I
was never a fan of Pearl Jam or Eddie Vedder, and this movie really made me appreciate him. I thought he did a great job with the soundtrack.
I like Pearl Jam. I liked Pearl Jam. You know, in the 90s, I was a fan of grunge, with the exception of Nirvana, except for Bleach. That's a good album.
The disagreeing starts. I gotta crack open a can of not a sponsor.
Oh shoot, I'm gonna open a bottle of not a sponsor.
No, I could definitely see that. It was kind of weird to have a soundtrack that was like, usually you hear a score, not a soundtrack that is one singer-songwriter over and over again. Yeah.
And I mean, there were a few points where they played some other music, but there was just so much of what you think of as cinematic points in the movie where you would have like a cinematic composer that they've got like Eddie Vedder doing some shit. Like, and a lot of it wasn't even Pearl Jam.
Yeah, none of it was. A lot of it was, I mean, well, I shouldn't say none of it. It did say there were a lot of original songs for this. They were just his solo songs. And I do think that like a lot of the scenes, and especially like, you know, the Society song he sings, it's like it wouldn't have as much of an effect if it was just a score that didn't have lyrics. But with that being said, I don't know if necessarily someone with such a distinctive voice as Eddie Vedder was the best choice for just like what is supposed to be backing music like that.
Yeah, it was because for a few minutes I thought like, are these like weird like live acoustic songs by Pearl Jam I've never heard? And then I was like, wait a second, Eddie Vedder did do his own shit on some occasion. Yeah. And then but yeah, I do think that using someone as well known as him maybe wasn't the best idea. I mean, that's the reason why in 2007 casting Emile Hirsch was a good idea, because he's not super well known.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like I think the whole idea of like this, you know, Alexander Supertramp persona thing is interesting.
Well, and the way they tell the story of it almost being like the chapters of that character's life, of how there's like a rebirth and then the adolescence and then adulthood of like that being a new character. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to tell the story.
Yeah, that was a cool way to kind of divide it up. And I'm pretty sure the author did that in the book too, right?
I think so. I've never read the book, so I'm not sure,
really?
But I believe so. Yeah.
Because I looked at a couple brief like summaries of a couple spots in it, the book, and I thought that I saw the same headings in there, but I just kind of skimmed over them really quick. I didn't really go too crazy with it. But you know, like and the thing is, like, the idea is like some of the stuff that I just watched in the film was like a lot of the ideas that he has are stuff that I'm just kind of over now.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I know that there's people, and that's the reason why I gave a yes for sure you watch, because many other people will get something out of it. And I think that you know, you in particular being someone that you saw this movie like very close to when it first came out, and like later on, I have a feeling that you probably think a lot differently about it now than you did before, that you still get something out of it.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. And it's like you said, it's the way you worded that, like ideas that you're over, because I think that, like we've talked about, a lot of the ideas are kind of naive and adolescent. And even the character, as he grows, realizes that. I mean, at the end of the movie, he's, you know, he has that realization and is trying to leave the wilderness and is unfortunately trapped there. But it's like, it's, sorry, hold on, I lost where I was trying to find that. Fuck. No, but I do think that like being past that idea, I think everyone has kicked around that idea at some point. Like, if you haven't thought about abandoning society and just living out in the wilderness, I think you're not paying attention enough, basically. Like, I think everyone has at least had that thought at some point. And then you realize, like, well, hold on, what does that really entail? What does that mean? How is it? And then, like, you know, the logistics break down that it's, you know, that it's utopian. It's not an actual realistic idea. Yep.
And that's actually something that I put in my notes toward the end of the film, particularly when he eats the wrong thing. Is that I put that I love how it ruins the ideological utopia of natural humans and the joy of living off of nature. That it actually shows you that it's not some like wonderful thing like your sociology professor might want to tell you, that it's actually something that's not easy and it's very difficult.
Yeah.
And, you know, being somebody that has like a muscle disease, I'm partially disabled, I guess you would say. Like, I would die. Like, I wouldn't be able to survive. At least not like in a strictly living like off of nature and that's it, like without any kind of civilization of any sort. I just would perish. But yeah, I mean, dude, like, I've even recently had a similar idea, but it was like having someone just drop me off in the frickin' woods with some clothes, a knife, and some boots, and then just like get back to civilization. And then, like, if I live, great. If I die, then I didn't deserve to live, kind of thing.
You wouldn't take a rifle?
Oh, well, no, I mean, I'd like to, but it just seems a little more edgy.
I get.
Like, could you imagine like dropping out of a tree, like, like onto a moose and just like stabbing it in the neck repeatedly? I'm pretty sure a moose would probably kill me if I tried that. I mean, actually, I don't even know how to like climb a tree, to be honest.
I was about to say, it's like if I wanted to take a rifle, it'd be a 22 probably, which it's not going to help me against a bear or anything really large. So yeah, I guess that's not really going to do much. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of larger caliber rifles that won't stop a bear.
Yeah.
I mean, bears are scary animals, man. And speaking of which, like the scene at the end of the film where he gets approached by the bear, I feel almost bad for laughing about it. I was like, well, luckily you're too skinny to eat.
Yeah, that was a powerful. I loved how the bear just didn't care about him. I think he was too skinny to eat. I think the bear could probably smell the sickness on him too. That was just like your disease. And also, like, I love the other side of it. Like, the bear doesn't even register you as a threat or anything. Like, you're so weak. It's just like, yeah, whatever. Like, you're here.
You're just existing. Fun fact: the blue-tongued skink, the lizard. Its tongue is blue to ward off predators because it gives the predator the impression that it's sick.
Interesting. That's kind of cool.
When they see its tongue, it's like, oh, you got a blue tongue, bitch. You're too sick for me to eat. You're probably gonna kill me.
I've got a fun fact real quick. I was going through my notes. This is one of the ones right at the beginning. So you remember the very beginning, the guy that drops him off, says that this is as far as he could take him at the wilderness, even gives him those rain boots. That's the actual last person to see him alive. That guy plays himself. That is the guy that drove him there and dropped him off and actually gave him the pair of rain boots that you see him wearing in the picture. I thought that was really interesting. I happened to pause the movie at that point, and when the guy's credit showed up, it was Jim Gallion credited as Jim Gallion. And I was like, why is this guy playing himself? And I Googled it, and it was like, that's the actual dude, the last person to see him alive.
You know, I paused that and I saw the same thing, but I didn't think to look it up.
And that's why I'm artistic. I think that's what they call it. I think it's
creative, artistic.
Yeah, I have that artism. I think that's what it's called.
Genius artism.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of stuff in the movie that I think, even though I found some of it naive, there's some things that are very real. Oh yeah. Like honestly, like, Vince Vaughn is a perfect cast for the guy. I don't even know what the
Wayne
person's name. Yeah, Wayne. He was a perfect cast for that. I love the scene where he gets arrested. He's like, well, we know what this is about, guys. Hey, everyone, if you need your checks, I might be gone a while, so just keep things going. He's like just completely cool about it.
I think so many of the cast jobs were perfect. His, like, Christopher's parents were both amazing. Well done. Like the mom did the overbearing mom so well, where it's just like, you can't be mad at her because everything is well intentioned, but it's just so much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like but she I forget of the actress that played that character, but I think she did a great job with that role. And then the father did phenomenal too. Like that was just, I think he played that perfectly well. Up in including the breakdown in the middle of the street later in the movie. I think that was portrayed very well too.
Yeah. William Hurt has been in some real good shit.
Yeah.
He was in Twister.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
If you remember that movie.
Yeah.
Back when Helen Hunt was still acting.
Speaking of sorry, go ahead.
There's other shit that he's been in. I'm gonna look him up on IMDb because I'm trying to remember. There's one film William Hurt was in that I really, really, really liked.
Speaking of
what were you saying, man?
The mom and dad scene, like or the early in the movie, the right after the graduation, they're sitting in the that restaurant and they're kind of having that conversation, and like it turns to the car and they try to give him a car, and he like he kind of, it doesn't like blow up at him, but he like tries to explain to them that he doesn't want things. He's looking for something that's not tangible. I wonder, do you think that he was already planning at that point to completely like leave society, or did that kind of interaction push him over the edge? And because it seemed like they're talking about Harvard, and it seems like he was considering school. Like it didn't seem like, I don't know, like the way that conversation went, it made me wonder if like he was already planning to leave at that point, or what feeling you got that from that.
I mean, I kind of thought that it seemed to me that because of the sort of person he seemed to be, I think he'd always been kicking the idea around. Mm-hmm. And, the one thing about the movie that I think is a little more complex is it's not this silly like Wanderlust kind of thing. Yeah. That he doesn't just want to go someplace. He also wants to get away from something that he finds rightfully, I think, to be toxic. Yeah. So I think he was already kicking the idea around, and I think he was still in the state of like pleasing mom and dad. Mm-hmm. And just doing whatever he thought he was supposed to do. And I think that he just started to have like different thoughts about things. And depending upon the courses he took in college, sometimes some of the stuff that you learn, depending upon your coursework, can make you think about things like this, And
I did want to mention that because when Karine talks about, at one point in the movie, she talks about receiving his final transcripts from the school. And it was like, she mentions that it was all A's, but then she actually starts to talk about the classes he was taking. And like, it was specifically like one of the classes was apartheid in South Africa. Another one was like African diseases and something. Like, it was like, he's very specifically studying and like familiarizing himself with like third world and the injustice that's going on in the world, I guess, like socioeconomically. So it seemed like, he was like, obviously very interested in that subject.
Yeah, and I think that when I heard that in particular, like I almost kind of rolled my eyes a little bit because I was like, "That's a class. Mm-hmm. Like, you can take a whole course on that." I'm like, I get, and that's the only reason why. Like learning about those things, I think that's good stuff to know. But also, like, you can take a whole course. Like, that's crazy.
Well, it would probably, I mean, that would have to be high level. It's like, that would be like a 400 level course where you're like way in that discipline. And that's like a, very specific, like. Yeah.
And, like, but I do think he was at least kicking the idea around. I don't know if that necessarily pushed him over the edge, mm-hmm. but I don't even know if he was being sincere when he was saying, like, oh, I could go to Harvard. It almost seems like, because I think he did mention Harvard.
Yeah, the way he said like he said like his grades are good enough for Harvard or something like that. Like he never said like, oh, I'm thinking of going there. It was like, my grades are good enough to get into Harvard.
It's almost like he was saying that to make fun of them.
Yeah, I wondered. Yeah,
like sort of to make a mockery. Like, but little do they know. And you can see like how they centered everything on what other people thought, and. Yeah. We've all met those people. We've met the person that has done shit with their life, but all they do is boast and boast about things that are not true. Yeah. Like I met a dude in a bar near here that was talking about like he was talking about riding road bicycles, and he said something about riding from like here to like a coastal town, like 3.5 hours from here with a group of friends. And I asked him what their average speed was, and he said 20. And I was like, oh, you're a legend.
Yeah.
You're superhuman.
Yeah,
How
that's
come I've never
insane,
heard
isn't
of
it?
you?
Yeah.
A 20 average, that's amazing. And
Well, if you're going downhill the whole time.
I mean, it does get flat toward the end, but and then like we just kind of kept going with it, and it was all just this weird like boasting. And the thing is like, unfortunately, like we just established that I'm a cyclist. Like, why are you talking to somebody that knows about this stuff?
Yeah.
Like this, and you know, we've all met those people. So, and I think that his parents were very much the illusory kind. It's not necessarily boasting, but creating this like illusion of what they are to everyone else. But for me, you know, that's not like a satisfying or meaningful thing in reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think that was kind of the part, he even tries to point to that with like them wanting to give him a new car. And it's like, well, why are you worried about what the neighbors think? Because he drives an older Datsun. Like they try to play it off. They're like, oh, we want something safe for you. It's like, you never know when that, like the mom even says, you never know when that thing's going to blow up. It's like, which is the stereotypical like mom thing to say, that it's like, oh, first of all, like, okay, literally the car's going to blow up. Like if anything, okay, if you want to be realistic, break down on you, I guess. But it's still, yeah, I thought that situation was, but like, that's the thing about that scene is it's so real. It's not like, it's not ridiculous. It's like that scene happens at dinner tables all over the country, all over the world, every fucking night.
Yeah. It's like, yes, but what will everyone else think? And you know, there were times when I was growing up where my dad would say the same shit. Like, it looks bad. I was like, I don't give a fuck, bro. I do not care. But you know, and there's some things like some stuff I think matters and some stuff doesn't. Yeah. Like I don't care that somebody thinks that I need to grow up if I'm in my 30s and I still wear like Nike sneakers or like, you know, Air Force Ones or something like that. You know, that's just stupid and doesn't matter. But you know, there's certain situations or certain contexts, I guess, where it does matter. But the thing that I thought was fun about this movie for me was one thing about the parents, and it was that I remember a certain type of conservative, a certain type of like Republican stereotype from the 90s. And it was like, do you like my khakis? They're pleated. Yeah. Yes. So what I did, I went to high school and then I went to college. And then I started a career. I got married. I had children. I purchased a house in the suburbs, joined the country club to fulfill my duty in society as a American citizen. We will be ordering our white picket fence in a few months. And you know, it's like, I never use profanity. I always say things like African American and of South American descent. It was like a thing that because I think a lot of people don't like realize that the whole idea of political correctness actually came from conservatives more like in the late 80s, early 90s. That it was a thing that Republicans and more like sort of conservative-ish people, and there were even some Democrats that were a little more conservative. Like it was a way that they preserved decorum in a public space.
Gotcha. Yep.
So, and like I don't want to make that about like a weird like, you know, thing. Like I'm not trying to polarize the conversation, but it's like there was a certain flavor of that I remember from then that like was just for me. I was like, you know, wearing 9 Inch Nails t-shirts and, you know, like baggy jeans and like skateboard shoes. And it was just kind of like, man, you guys are lame. Like, why can't you be cool? You know? And I was just like, those are those people that I used to make fun of when I was a kid. And it's hilarious because she's got like the mom has like the perfect hair.
Yep. Oh,
and all that. And the dad's shirt is always tucked in.
Yep.
And, you know, like, and obviously I'm talking stereotypes here, but I just, there's something, I just remember like when I was a kid and thought I was the coolest person alive and everybody that I knew was cool and old people didn't know anything. Those were always the people that I was like making fun of.
But with that being said, I definitely like like you said earlier, this is a movie that I have seen for, you know, over a decade in multiple viewings. Not that I've sitting and watched the movie for over a decade, but I have seen this movie multiple times over a decade of my life, and I've gotten different things from it as I grow. And this is a movie that the later in life I've watched it, the more I empathize with the parents and what they went through, rather than just seeing the story from Chris or Alex's perspective, and like seeing like literally, I mean, like that has to be devastating. Like no matter how much, I'm in the same boat as you, where I mean those characters do kind of represent a a stereotype that I'm not a huge fan of. But it's like, as I watch the movie, it's like there's still, you know, parents that I have to empathize with. And it's like they effectively lost their son and had no idea where he was for, I think it was like 2 years as he went around the country. That's rough. Like that's got to be incredibly devastating as a parent.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that's stuff that I thought a few times during the film too, that they really have no idea where this guy is. And there's a few times where I was like, is he running away from society or his parents? Is society really the thing that he hates?
Well, because there is that part where he, after Mexico and after the train and everything, ends up back in, I don't know if they tell you what city it is, but where he ends up even getting a bed and he tries to get an ID and everything. And it's like, that made me wonder, it's like, okay, well, is it just running away from that life? If he's willing to, you know, basically be a bum on the streets of a city, you're not running away from society. But at that point, you know, it was literally just, he didn't even make it one night. You know, he saw I think that scene was really well done. He was wandering around the downtown and he looked in that upscale bar and saw the image of like what he could be years from then and was like, nope, fuck this. And like grabbed his bag and like got out of town. But
and I have a feeling that might have been LA.
I can see that.
Just like some of the imagery and some of a couple of the scenes and a couple of the locations looked a bit like LA to me, which would be kind of like the quintessential like fuck society place to go, where you would think that because you know once again stereotypes, but
he also didn't choose there. He just kind of hopped on a train and ended up like yeah. Well,
you know, and it's interesting because like when I think about this movie, I think about another film. Did you ever see Eat, Pray, Love?
I know the name. I can't picture the movie though.
So Julia Roberts is in it, and Julia Roberts is this, you know, this woman that has like lived this life, and at some point, one of her friends, I think, says to her husband that she was never necessarily meant for the granite countertop lifestyle.
Oh, yeah, I do remember this movie. Yeah.
And when it's because for some reason that like when you say that, it's like, oh, yep. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep.
So I'm fairly certain that this character, I believe, has children. And it's like, well, you know, I've lived this life and haven't been true to myself. So now I'm just going to go on an adventure. And I'm like, is everyone forgetting about the fact she just abandoned an entire family? Like, I don't like the idea of, I'm sorry, I'm ranting now, but the idealism like attached to this whole, like, you need to have experiences and that adventure. Like there's some experiences that just really aren't worth it. And there's a lot of stuff that when I'm watching this movie, it's like, oh, all right, buddy. Like I get it. You're going on your little adventure and all that, but like, you're also being really, really, really selfish.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that's actually what the big dog in chat just asked. Like, do you think his quest for freedom was selfish? And I think of course, like it's 100% selfish. But like we've talked about, selfish is not necessarily a bad thing. Is this the bad type of selfish?
I think in that, you know, he didn't let anybody know what was happening. I think that is the only bad part of it.
It makes me wonder though, would it have worked if he didn't? I don't know. Like, think of his parents the way they are. Would his parents have let him be somewhere in the country with, you know what I mean? Like, he's like, I'm just going to live on my own in this, you know what I mean? Like the overbearing parents, I don't see that working. Yeah. Like, I think that like, which I'm not, I feel like I'm kind of being like apologist for what he did, which it is, I'm not, but I do think that I could see his character as thinking there's no other way to do this other than if they don't know where I am.
Yeah, I mean, you can see like some of the terms that the sister used in like the narrating that when they were fully mobilized.
Yeah.
It seems that even, I think you're correct to some degree. I mean, but he could have been like, hey, I'm on a payphone. I'm not telling you where the fuck I am.
Exactly. At least let them know, hey, I'm alive. I'm okay. Like something like that. But would that have been any better? You know what I mean? Like I'm not a parent, so I don't know what that would be like, but it's like, I've always, you know, it's like knowing that they're alive, you hear I'm alive and I'm okay, but you have no idea where they are and then no more communication. Is that any better than just wondering? I don't know. But
yeah, and I think that to some degree you hear also some narrating about what's happening, that the parents are becoming less like they were, and it's something that only happens by the softening of somebody when they lose someone.
Yeah.
And I've worked with like presidents and VP level employees that one of their parents dies, and all of a sudden, like all of that foolish like arrogance and the "do you know who I am" mentality just goes away.
Yeah. Yep.
And they recognize like, oh, there's other things that are important. But on the subject of the parents and of his actual decision to like leave, there's a line with the Rainey, the hippie guy, where he says children can be pretty harsh when it comes to parents. And I wrote a little paragraph in here when I was like watching it. I actually paused it to write this in my phone. I said that I think many of us get to a point where we judge our parents harshly. And then at a certain point, we realize that they're just people. And we're hypocritical for judging them like they're not.
Well, as a child, you don't see them as just people. You know, it's like up until a certain age, they are the like they're infallible. You know, it's like they are these two pillars of like, this is every bit of knowledge from the world comes from them up until a certain age. And then you discover TV and peers and stuff like that. And then later there's a certain age that comes where it's like, oh shit, they are literally just two people trying to do their best, not like some, you know, fonts of absolute knowledge. Yeah.
Because the judgment kind of comes from, because I think there's this point where you see that they're not, but you think they really should be.
Yeah.
So then you're super harsh, you know, and like they did this wrong and you did that wrong and I blame you for this. And it's like, and then that's the point where it's like, wait a second, they're not supposed to be and they're not.
Yeah. Yep.
So and like that kind of happened with me with, you know, some things involving my parents too, until I was just like, oh, wait a second, like I'm not perfect either, and neither are they. And
see, but what's interesting about this movie and what I think is really unfortunate is that happened to Alex. And that never happened to Chris. Alex's parents, he got to see that way. Jan and Rainey, that I look at those as like the parents that character had. He didn't get to have that moment with his true parents, and like until basically the scene that they show of him dying in the bus, where he kind of has that moment where he like visualizes, you know, reuniting with his parents. But it's unfortunate that like he had that with his pseudo parents.
Yeah, did you like? I was really weirded out because I kept trying to figure out if he had a thing for Jan.
I didn't get that feeling at all.
Some of it just seemed a little weird. Like some of the things he said, like the part where like they're like cooking hot dogs in Slab City, which actually I wanted to talk about Slab City a little bit.
I can't wait to get to Slab City. I realized I lied to you.
You what?
I lied to you. We'll get to it. The Slab City taught me that I lied to you.
Oh shit, okay. But there's a scene where like they're about to go eat and he leans over the chair real close to Jan. He's like, do you want to sit here or do you want to go eat? Because I will sit here with you all night. And the way that Emil Hirsch delivered the line sounded very like,
I didn't get that from it. I took it as like,
okay, maybe I just have a thing for Jan. I don't know.
Or Emil Hirsch.
Why not both?
¿Por qué no los dos? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But no. So speaking of, I definitely lied to you. A few weeks ago, we were talking about Underwater, and I said there's a reason why I really like Underwater, and you were like, do you have a crush on Kristen Stewart? I said no. Like the reason why I said no is because that wasn't the reason I was talking about in that moment. I definitely do have a huge crush on Kristen Stewart. I lied to you. So Slab City was, but I felt bad about that because I'm pretty sure she was 16 in this movie.
Hold on, let me do the math.
And like the actress and the character, I'm pretty sure.
Usually characters are much younger than the Oak.
She was born in 1990 and this movie was filmed in 2006.
I thought it was but it was released in 2007.
Yeah, so when it was released, she was 17. Is that better? This isn't getting any better, but
well, either way, the Kristen Stewart is currently like,
she's currently 30, so yeah, that's fine.
So it's like, it is what it is. But the thing that really bothered me is like I just see, Kristen Stewart just showed up and playing whatever you call that character that Kristen Stewart is always playing.
Yeah.
It's just the awkward, like,
which I think fit.
I can't stand her acting. It's so bad.
I thought that fit really well for that. What was it? Tracy, I think was the.
Yeah, but I suppose, but I feel like to some degree Kristen Stewart was still playing that character in Underwater.
Yeah, no, I agree.
To some degree.
I think, there's a lot of actors that, like, I don't know if it's necessarily they don't have range or that they've just, like, I think people get typecast and then I don't know, like, if it's the casting agent or what, but like someone for that movie wants you to be that specific person, and it's like you were picked for that role because they saw you in this, and this, and they want you to be this. And it's like, you may show up to that role wanting to show your range and wanting to do something different. And they're like, well, no, we want, like, I feel like Michael Cera is probably the same box. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily that, like, he can't act, or it's just like they always hire him wanting, like, well, no, we're looking for this role. We saw you in this and you've always been this. Like,
I think he was in one movie where he did a little differently, but I can't remember what it was. But it's like, I understand what you're saying. Cause like sometimes they'll be like, casting, hey, you know what? We should call Ryan Reynolds.
Exactly. Like, so many roles I think are written literally with like a character or an actor in mind. It's like, this is going to be written for this person or budget version of this person. Like, so often it's like, you know, those actors that are like great value version of other actor.
Yeah. Like, Michael J. White is like he's like the cheap Wesley Snipes. He's like the Equate brand of Wesley Snipes.
There's did you see Breaking Bad or El Camino?
El Camino.
It was the Breaking Bad movie with Jesse Pinkman about the El Camino.
Oh no, I heard of it, but yeah, I am familiar with the series to some degree.
There's an actor in that to me is like, he's the great value Philip Seymour Hoffman. I don't know if you can picture who I'm talking about, but he's younger, but it's like, I feel like in 10, 15 years, he's going to be just playing all of the roles that Philip Seymour Hoffman would have been playing, basically, if he didn't OD.
Yeah. Philip Seymour Hoffman is like a walking Oscar award.
Yeah, he was great. Yeah.
It was like all the shit. He did that movie. Didn't he do, oh my God, what was he in? He played, oh my God, what the fuck? Capote. He played Capote
very well. Yes.
Yeah. But, and that is kind of funny though. It's a funny thought. But, yeah. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe, Anne Hathaway should have played that character instead of Kristen Stewart.
In this movie?
Anne Hathaway was young enough at the time, right?
No.
Well, people in their 20s play teenagers all the time.
True. Yeah. True.
I mean, it's like every movie that's about high school, like everyone's 23.
Exactly. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, but I don't know. I loved it with Kristen Stewart.
It's like that 15-year-old has a hell of a beard. Maybe for that specific little role, it was necessary.
Yeah, and I think it is like the normal problem people have is that like she seems like the Bella, which is like the awkward high school character, which is basically what Tracy was supposed to be too. Like, it was just, unfortunately not in high school because, I guess the end of the movie, it does show her in school though. She's like at a prom, which I thought was kind of strange. I didn't understand the dynamic there. It was like, I thought living at Slab City, you probably weren't going to a school, but
I thought that was his sister.
I get Jenna Malone and Kristen Stewart mixed up a lot. That may have been. Okay.
Well, I saw Kristen Stewart in the credits and I thought Jenna Malone was Kristen Stewart for like half a second. So for a second, I thought it was Kristen Stewart. I was like, wait a second, that makes no sense. That has to be.
Maybe maybe it was then. Okay.
But who knows? Maybe something changed there. But it was really weird because there's a scene where like the young character, the Kristen Stewart, is like, "Come in here, let's do it." He's like, "No, we can't because you're like really young." And he's like, "You know what we can do?" And it's like they're doing a duet. I'm like, "Really, guys?"
I want to talk about that scene, but like, okay, I don't want to sound okay, like. I'm trying not to like, okay, it's not like it's okay to have sex with people that are underage, but what I'm saying is the only reason why we consider that wrong is because it's a societal view, right? Like that is we look at that, we picked an age of 18 because of a societal thing. At other points in society, that age was completely different. Look at medieval times, people were married at like 12 and so like it's interesting to me. I'm not saying that like, I'm not trying to say that it was right or anything, but to me, it's interesting for a character that is rejecting society to cling to a rule that is basically just an arbitrary rule that society has created in that scene. They're like, it didn't seem to be like a moral thing. It's like, if you really think of like what matters, it's like the mental age or the maturity of a person. Right. Yeah. Like, it's not like I think that, like, again, I mean, this is a weird conversation to have. And I feel like I feel like I'm ending up on a list by saying this, but it's like we picked an age because there needs to be a hard line in a society, not because of like on a case by case basis. It's like, oh, as soon as someone turns 18, it's OK. You know, it's like what really matters, I think, is the average maturity level. And that's why we pick a certain level. And it's like, if you have two characters that are getting along so well that they obviously mesh, it's like, does that really matter? It's like, it seems like what mattered to him was this arbitrary rule that we have picked basically because of society.
Yeah. And Slab City's, I mean, kind of lawless, so to speak. There's no real like government reach or anything. Like, nobody really does anything, so they don't really have rule of law out there. But I mean, I understand what you're saying, but and you know, the point being that and I get it, that you know, there's a certain life path in our society and in the West, in the United States, and there's a certain degree of like, you know, mental and emotional maturity that's you know, better for, you know, being in like a romantic relationship in general, which is funny because like people date much younger than that. But and then there's also like this the way that things go, that you're not really established enough in the life that you know, you haven't fulfilled all the things you need to really establish a lifestyle yet. So that's the reason why that stuff exists. That the yeah, I get what you're saying, and it makes sense, but it is interesting that and I get the point that you're making, that if he thinks, you know, he's rejecting everything about it, that particular rule is one that he
I mean, like I agree that it feels wrong, but I think the only reason why it feels wrong is because of society.
Yeah, and if the way that we structured our like life path was different, then I think that it might be okay, depending, and also it depends on the proximity of age too, because also if you're talking like medieval era, people were like dying at 30, so it's sort of like life wasn't that long then anyway, so there wasn't really a likelihood of somebody being like, you know, 20 or 30 years older than somebody, most likely, because by that time they were pretty much dead. Like the only time you were 20 years older than someone was when they were like a baby. So yeah, I do find it interesting though, because I mean, he in a sort of like framework that he rejects, there's still certain things, and I'm sure it was just like internalized norms from his childhood and things like that, just like how you're raised and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, and I think it points out kind of like you're talking about, of like how most of the ideas are kind of immature, half-baked, and naive. And it's like, if you really do a deep dive into your philosophy, you kind of realize that society is at the base of a lot of what you believe it existed, and it's not something you can just run away from. It's always going to be a core. And I think that the movie, I think, does that really well. At least, like, I don't know if it's just I got this from, I don't know if this was intended or just something I got, but you are not able to escape society no matter what. And because, like, if you define society, it's really just like, we're doing a little bit better based on the work that someone else has done previously. And that's like in the wilderness, when he finally makes it to Alaska, his big goal, the biggest day, the most happy he is when he finds this bus that is literally just like, basically you're finding a little bit of society. There's no other people there, but it's like, it's shelter. It's like, there's the utensils, there's all sorts of things there that it's literally like, how is that, you know, if you're wanting to escape society, which is basically just, you know, being given tools from people that were there previously, it's weird that the best moment you have is finding basically that out in the wilderness.
Yeah, that is true. And, you know, the one thing that I think a lot of people forget, like, you very often hear this idea, people will say, society this, society that. Society makes you think this is society's idea. Society's giving you this idea that you have to this. And I think that a lot of the times we forget that this thing we call society is just a collection of individuals.
Yeah. Yep.
And that you are always going to find individuals in whatever society you're talking about that you will be able to get something from, that you won't hate, that you won't think are some terrible whatever. And I think that that's illustrated a lot in the film. And I mean, you know, the thing that he jots down in his one of his books at the end in all capital letters, happiness only real when shared.
Yep.
And it's funny to me because there's a part where he's talking to Mr. Franz, I think Ron is his first name.
Yeah. Yep.
And he says to him, let me see, I think I wrote it down in here, that the joy of life isn't tied principally to other people. And then you go straight to a scene of him like lonely in the woods.
Yeah.
Shooting his gun in the air.
Well, I think that it's like an idea that we always seem to find ourselves back to, is there's a balance. It's not strictly one way or another. And I think that that's like, he kind of teetered on both and found at the end, unfortunately too late, that it has to be a little bit of both. You can't only rely on other people as being your only source of happiness, but you also can't completely disregard them and think that you can exist, you know, solo. Unfortunately, right. Humanity is a social creature. We need that interaction.
Yeah. And there's still times where I find myself getting, even though I consider myself more of an extrovert, there are times like where I do kind of need to just like, okay, I'm done with everybody. Mm-hmm. And then like for a brief period of time, I'm like, all right, I'm by myself. This coffee is good and no one's here and there's no one. And I'm all, look, it's a book. I will read it and coffee and book and no one. And then after a little while, I'm like, I kind of need to hang out with somebody. Maybe I'll text someone or call somebody or go somewhere.
I mean, same thing with me. Like, I mean, I am a very introverted. You know, I can exist for a long time by myself, and I have the stereotypical like recharging that introverts need. When I spend time with other people, like I have a limited duration of that, and then I need to go and be by myself, and that's where I feel like I'm quote unquote recharging. But I've realized exactly what he said, that happiness is only real when shared. Even when I enjoy moments by myself, when I am experiencing, you know, enjoyable, for instance, watching movies like this. I enjoy being by myself, sitting and experiencing a movie, but what I enjoy so much more is talking about that movie with a friend. This, like, the enjoyment of the experience by myself is one thing, but the sharing of that experience is what makes it real and what solidifies the happiness. And it's like, it's so sad that he had to realize that too late, but it's like, it's a powerful realization. I think I forget what movie I brought this up with before, but it's like, that's one of the things I love about film so much is you can learn from someone else's mistakes without having to make them yourselves. And you can watch things. I forget. Do you remember what movie it was where I talked about that? I remember this, like the same conversation before, but I forget what context it was.
Yeah, I don't remember what movie it was.
I think it was either Elizabethtown or Wish I Was Here. It was something about like reconciling with your father before they died. And it was and both of those movies had to deal with the father die. I think it was one of those two. But either way, it's like you can watch someone else. I think again, any medium can do this, but I think film does it incredibly well because of the way that it can create emotional experiences through multimedia with both, you know, visual, sound, and other things like that. But it can show you emotions and show you moments, and you can like almost experience them without having to experience the detriment of it. And you can realize things that a character had to realize through, you know, basically dying. And not have to, you know, not have to have that circumstance.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that you hear people say often, that life is a lesson, you learn it when you're through. And it's an interesting sort of idea watching him sort of figure something out toward the end of his own life, which it's almost like by some strange like force of nature that when he figured it out, he almost had to die right then.
You know what's really sad too?
All of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, this like, you remember how so at the end of the movie, you know, they show him, and they show so you know, they do the thing in the movie where they kind of repeat the theme of calling everything by its right name, and he then they show his, you know, the sign that he carved where he signed it, Alexander Supertramp. Then they also show the camera pans to a little sign that he signed with his real name, Christopher McCandless. So that sign in the bus so in the movie, the quote that was on that little sign was just taken from one of his journals. The real sign that was hanging there was this: SOS, I need your help. I am injured, near death, and too weak to hike out of here. I am all alone. This is no joke. In the name of God, please remain to save me. I am out collecting berries close by and shall return this evening. Thank you, Chris McCandless. August? ? That's so sad that literally to the very end, he was hoping that possibly someone could come by and he could have some chance of being rescued. Like in the movie, it portrays it as he was almost like coming to peace with the fact that he was dying there and that he was okay with that and accepting that, versus like, that's very different. Like that is like a you know, a very different last few days rather than the way it's portrayed.
Yeah, because the problem with based on a true story is that it doesn't always make a good movie. And you know, half the time, like the lines for the based on a true story are things that the people say in interviews. Like the movie that where Al Pacino played Jack Kevorkian. Half the things he said to other people in that movie were things that he said in interviews and on TV.
I don't know if I've ever seen that. I didn't know Pacino played Kevorkian. Holy shit!
Oh yeah, he was pretty good too.
Is that is that worth putting on the list?
I mean, I think so, honestly. Jack Kevorkian. I'm pretty sure that was Al Pacino. Yeah, You Don't Know Jack. That was the name. Huh. Oh, it was actually a made-for-television movie.
Interesting. I played the video game quite a bit growing up. You played You Don't Know Jack, right?
Oh yeah. Hell yeah, dude. Of course. Yeah, You Don't Know Jack, 2010. It was a TV movie. I do not remember what network it came. Oh, HBO. It was an HBO film.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
actually, that wouldn't be a bad one to put on there. It's a pretty cool movie. I think that's some of the best work that Al Pacino has done because I wouldn't call Al Pacino a character actor, and to have to play a person, I think, is another type of character acting, I guess, to some degree. So it was cool to see Al Pacino as that, and I think he did a really good job. So yeah, that wouldn't be a bad one to put on our list.
Yeah, it's interesting to see someone. I mean, because it's one thing to act, like Daniel Day-Lewis played Lincoln. You know, it's like, okay, so you can act as a character from history, but to act as someone that we actually have footage of and you could see how they act, like that's very tough. You have to really mimic someone's behaviors. And I mean, when Johnny Depp did it as Hunter S. Thompson, he lived with him for months and tried to like really learn how to become him and everything. Like,
yeah, and that was like kind of freaky, actually. Like there's something uncanny about some of the stuff that Johnny Depp does on film.
Yeah.
And I mean uncanny in like the creepiest of ways.
There's I'm trying to scroll through my notes and find things that we like didn't touch on. Oh man, one scene that really hit me hard was the scene where Ron asks if he can adopt him. That was tough because, like, I mean, one, it was just sad. Ron's story and everything was fucking sad, but also like that hit me especially hard because I'm in the same boat as Ron, where I'm the end of my family. My like the name dies with me if I don't reproduce. So it's like I like that resonated with me in a special way, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I just think so many of these scenes were done very well. I think the performance in this movie were just great all around. It was a lot of really good acting.
Yeah, actually, during that scene, I was like, "Yep, he's gonna die."
Yeah,
I just knew that's what was gonna happen. Like when I saw that scene, I was like, "Yep, that's what's gonna happen." I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit sad when he told him, like, "Can we talk about this when I get back?" I agree. But you know, it's funny. Another fun trivia fact: there's a person in Slab City, the one that's with them on the adobes that are painted all the colors with like some of the religious messages and things.
Yeah, what do they call it? Salvation Mountain, I think.
Yeah. That dude, I think his name is Leonard something. The dude himself, like, was playing himself. I mean, that was actually the guy from there.
Is he the actual Salvation Mountain guy? Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, that's cool.
But he died in 2014, 7 years after the film.
That guy was really cool. Like
Leonard Knight, that's his name.
Leonard Knight. Okay. Like I am not a religious person, and a lot of times I can't help but roll my eye when people start to talk about God in situations, which I know it's just like a knee-jerk reaction sometimes, and I try to control it. But like that guy, the way he talked about love and then like likening it to God, it prevented me from rolling my eyes, and it really was just like the guy cared about love, and that was like it was a cool thing to hear. That was a really uplifting, wholesome moment in that movie.
And I even wrote in my notes that I said I don't hate the way the colored mound guy talks about God loving us a lot. Like that didn't upset me. I didn't think it was silly, because I do think it's kind of funny when like, you know, like I'm at of course, I mean, I have a regular barber now, but I'm at like a chain haircut place, and I'm telling somebody, like, I don't know how we got on the subject, but somehow somebody said something suggesting I should do this or that, and I could have just left it alone. But the person cutting my hair, like, I just said something about like, you know, I have this genetic muscle disease and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, maybe God will heal you. And I was like, God, can you not?
Yeah, stuff like that. That's the exact reason why that shit bugs me. It are moments like that. Yeah.
And yeah, but the way that he actually says it in the movie, and I don't even know if those were lines. I have a feeling he was just saying stuff that he says.
Probably, yeah. They were probably like, here, give these to the tour, and they just had a family like or a camera group follow him. Yeah.
And you know, I think I recall seeing. I think it was on Vice actually. They did a little segment on Slab City, and they like, I remember talking to him, and I think Kesha actually, after the whole like weird teeny bopper thing that her abusive producer or whatever had her doing, when she started making her own music, I'm fairly certain the song Praying that she did, I think that they filmed part of it at Slab City.
Oh really?
On the little Salvation Mound or whatever. Yeah,
that's interesting.
I'm pretty sure. I have to rewatch the video, but I'm fairly certain that that's where it's actually filmed. Which Slab City is just a cool and interesting place to me.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of people like kind of idealize it a bit. It's not as wonderful and perfect as it could be. And the place where they play music, it's called The Range.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's like their venue. That's actually where people will come out and just do like weird open mic kind of shit.
It is a place that I've wanted to visit for years. It's always like something that it's like, if I'm traveling out west, I'd love to like just stop there. I think it'd be a cool place to see. But
I thought it would be cool to like live in the freaking desert for a while. I mean, I think that would be cool. Not necessarily in a place like Slab City, but you know, one of those fun postmodern architecture engineered homes that's the right temperature all the time. Because
I don't know, I'm going to Alaska, man. I'm going north, man.
Can we talk about this when you get back?
Oh man. So one of the themes that just jumped out to me from this movie a lot, which I think it does very well, but it also I mean it shows the silliness too, but it's the call to adventure that a lot of people feel, and a lot, especially young men. And I think that the scene with Wayne, I think sums it up where he talks about juggling blood and fire, and there is this you know, like there is this enticement to adventure that a lot of times, like especially young men have, where in a society like we're kind of stuck in, you don't feel like you're free enough, I guess, or like what is it that you think that Chris was really chasing? Like, is it freedom? Is it adventure? Or I don't know the right word to use, but he feels like there's something missing from his life that he had to like leave what he had and abandon what he had to chase. And I do think that, I mean, of course, not everyone does what Chris did, but I think that most young men feel that at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that like in my, you know, part of my late 20s and even into, you know, my 30s and even currently, I don't have as much of it now, but like I would have little snippets of adventure, you know, like I would go mountain biking in some place that I'd never been to, or like go road biking in some area like way off where you're, you know, 30, 40 miles from home on a bicycle, and the only thing that's going to get you back is you. And I can relate to it somehow. And I think that maybe he was just bored with like ticking all the boxes and doing what he was supposed to do. And it's funny, my girlfriend, who's planning on going back to school, was talking about doing like a triathlon and stuff like that. I'm like, dude, wait till your 30s when you have a crisis to do a triathlon.
Exactly.
I was like, you're gonna go back to school. You don't even need that right now. Like, just do that like later. It's like, and then write a book about it or do a TED talk or some shit.
You just made me think about something. I'm sorry. Hold on. Go. If you weren't done, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that was it. Yeah.
I've never thought about it this way, but when you said bored, it just made me wonder, like, is it that Chris in this movie is shown as being, you know, I mean, he's like the all-star, you know what I mean? Like he's basically a genius. He's very smart. He's very well liked. He obviously has a positive influence on pretty much everyone he runs into. Even like at his graduation, he's obviously like a popular person. You know, he does the stupid stunt of running and jumping on stage and people cheer and shit. Like people like Chris. Chris probably has things pretty easy. It seems like he gets, you know, straight A's without really trying that much. He comes from a well-off family. I don't think Chris was ever challenged. Was he bored or was he not challenged? Did he need to do something to prove that he was capable because his entire life he was literally handed everything?
I mean, I think boredom can come from a lack of challenge. And I agree that that he probably didn't feel like he had one. I mean, some of us end up creating adversity for ourselves because we don't have it. And I mean, I can relate to that. Like I've done things that were really, really, really hard for me because I felt like I needed something to push me or to feel like I was going somewhere.
Yep.
And, you know, like I actually recently realized that one of the reasons why I've felt bored at work is because I haven't been challenged.
Yep.
So like today, actually, I had a conversation with a couple of my bosses and was like, well, you asked me to do this thing like right around the time the plague started, and I completely dropped the ball on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm going to do it now. So the challenge is happening, and I feel much better about my job because I've decided to do that.
Yeah. Good.
So I mean, in any way, I think that a lack of challenge is something that we all suffer from. Like you hear people in the military talk about how they miss sometimes being out in the freaking desert with like 7 or 8 of the same people taking craps in the holes in the ground. And there's something about that, like in the Sebastian Junger tribe in that book, they talk about a lot that people that have been like in war, like Kosovo, like people actually talked about how they sometimes kind of like life a little bit better before because things were really difficult.
Yep.
And you even tell him, like when he writes that letter back to Wayne about like, man, you paid me too much money.
Yeah, I have that part highlighted right here. I wanted to touch on, like, he even says that like it was so much more challenging and more rewarding when he was penniless. And that's, I mean, multiple times in the movie, he could have started with literally $24,000 in his pocket, and that would be like, I mean, that's cheating as far as the tramping lifestyle goes, right? Like that's like, I mean, that's basically the infinite money cheat, like, and that's. And then even when his car gets caught in the flash flood, he burns what little bit he had left to start. He's like, let's turn on hard mode and let's start from literal scratch.
Yeah, it's like this isn't enough. I need it to be worse. Mm-hmm. And you know, like, and that's one of the reasons why, like, I told my girlfriend specifically, because like, look, you're gonna do this stuff, you're gonna go get this PhD, you're gonna get your dream job, and then you're gonna think, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah, and then that's when you challenge.
I know, triathlon, you know, or whatever, like, you know, like that you get to this point where you are successful, you get your success. And then you are like, well, what do I do now? And then even when you challenge yourself, when the challenge is over, it's like, well, what now?
Yep.
And yeah, so I think that there is one thing about the movie that is not silly, that's not naive, that this whole idea of like, oh, you got to get out and have experiences, man. I hate it when people say that. Because half the time the experiences they're talking about are superficial anyway. Mm-hmm. But I will say that there is something about having something difficult that I think is something that isn't naive, and I think that there really is something there, and it's not some kooky like, I'm gonna see the world, man. Kinda,
well, and I mean, I think like on top of just being difficult, I think being not necessarily self-sufficient, just proving to yourself that you can do something, especially for a character like, which I kind of hate. Like, it felt weird talking about this because Chris isn't just a character, he was also a person. And so it's like we're like not also we're talking about a character in a movie, but we're also talking about a real person that lived and experienced these things, that has a family and everything too. That it's different than a lot of the movies we talk about where it's just, you know, like just ink on a page. But I mean, it does make you wonder. It's like being in a situation where you're essentially pretty well off and pretty for lack of a better term, privileged in a lot of ways. Like, you know, is it necessarily almost a good thing to give yourself this, more than a challenge, give yourself something to prove that it's like, oh, I can do this. Like, even the scene of him talking to himself in the mirror of the bus, where he's like, you know, you can do this. You're out here, like you can survive out here, like proving to yourself that you are strong enough or you know, for lack of a better term, man enough to do it, right?
You know, or, you know, good enough, or just enough in general. Am I enough? And yeah, I mean, I think it's important to have like that question answered, and I think that that's a lot of what the challenges are about, you know. And I think that all of this goes together, like easy life, everything going for you, little challenge, want for adversity, want for a challenge, want to feel or prove that you're good enough, to create like a rite of passage for yourself. And you know, I thought to myself that for the kids in my family, I'd like to give each of them an opportunity to have something. Like to give them that right. Because like we don't have those anymore. And I don't just mean, and I'm not saying just for the boys either. Like, I have a niece. I would love for her to have a thing that's like, you are now an adult, or you've crossed over, you've done this challenge thing, and now you've proven you can do this, and you should feel something.
Because that was a big thing in many, like almost every culture had a ritual of that type.
And, you know, I'm not saying we're going to do anything crazy, like, you know, we're going to put a freaking tree branch through your lip, you know, none of that.
Oh, well, now you're just being tame.
Sisters, in case you're listening, I'm not going to harm your children. But just to take them somewhere and say, hey, do you want to go see this thing? Okay, well, here's the map. You take me there.
Okay.
And then we'll like go on a hike, and we'll go through the woods, and we might take a couple of wrong turns, and we might get lost. I mean, I'll be there to like,
some of you may die. That's a risk I'm willing to take.
And I'll be there. So like because you need to allow children to bear some of the consequence of a mistake without all of it. So if we get lost,
that's what play is. Exactly.
If we get lost, I'll let the child get us lost, but I'll keep it like
controlled,
sort of contained. We're like, we won't get too lost, and I'll know where we are. And I'll kind of help them, lead them to understanding it. Or it's entirely possible we'll get all the way there and all the way back with absolutely no problems. But there's plenty of spots here where there's like waterfalls in the freaking woods, and I could just be like, here's the map, let's go. You know? And just something like that, I think, just to give them some kind of challenge to prove that they can do it.
You know what would be really cool? Like go there first and bury a present for them and geocache to that. So not only is it a location, but literally like they arrive and there's like something there that is then like, here, this is now yours. Like, so it's the experience, and also like then something they have to remember it and take home with too. And like a little like,
that's a good idea. Actually, that would be fun. Of course, that's just a challenge for me because I got to go out there twice.
Yep.
But it's just being able to have that, you know, and also like making sure they have the appropriate amount of pride, like to be happy about what you've done, and then they can go back and like tell their parents or their friends, like, oh, I did this and we found this thing and it was really cool.
I'm sure that's like an important confidence building thing.
And I think that's for everybody, just, you know, allowing kids to do something themselves, because I don't want them to grow up and think that as they get older, I don't want them to feel like they've never done anything.
Exactly. This like makes me think of the scene where Chris is trying to quarter the moose and is having the argument with his dad in his head of like, oh, shouldn't he light the grill this one time? Like, it's like, I mean, think of that. Like, how much as a kid do you want to help with something? And then possibly, depending on how your parents are, maybe they don't think you're, you know, up to handling it. And Yeah, like you're like, yeah, I think it's very important, like you're saying, to give children the ability to have an experience, to prove to themselves that, hey, I'm capable. I did this. I can do this.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few times as a kid, my dad was like, you know what? Fine, you can help me with this. Oh, well, you fucked that up. You got to fix it now. Like, okay, fine.
Yeah, and that's an important lesson too. Yeah.
Yeah, I measure twice, cut once.
Yeah. Yep.
I learned that the hard way a few times.
That's something that my grandfather on my mom's side was a carpenter, and that was like a thing that he said all the time. So yep, I've heard that quite a bit. That we've basically covered most of my notes. Yeah, we jumped around a little bit, but yeah, I think we got most of it. Oh, one couple we didn't talk about the Danish couple at all. Sonia and Mads, dude,
they were so freaking weird. Like
they were
like
hilarious though.
Like, and she was like, "The universe is so great," and he was like, "Your English is shit." He's like, "Wait, what?"
He's like, "I don't care if she's a little stupid."
Like,
yeah, they were funny. I loved them.
And she like just like takes her top off and like acts like there's nothing weird about it, because I guess it's not that weird for that culture.
Yeah,
and like gives him a hug and everything, and he's like, yeah. And then he's like, "Oh, well, the river control's after me. I gotta go, guys." Like, it's like we just had hot dogs. The real American fugitive.
Yeah, this movie made me want to move to Denmark. I've realized that their culture is amazing. I want to be there.
I hear they got bike lanes everywhere. Like dedicated bicycle, like you can go everywhere on one, and the traffic is always better than in a car.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Yep. There is actually quite a bit of nudity in Denmark. I remember seeing a naked, what I could only assume was a riverboat captain based on his beard and hat, but in Denmark.
Well, they have like a naked bicycle like ride in
oh really?
It's in Portland, of course.
Oh, I have heard of that. Yeah.
Which I mean, I riding a bicycle naked does not sound like fun to me. I riding, maybe they have different saddles than I do, but like I have to put on a good pair of shorts usually, or else I end up with some serious undercarriage harm.
The trick is to point your seat as far vertically as possible, and then you can just slot right into it, and it holds you there. And you don't have to worry about chafing when you're not actually moving around. You just kind of lock right into place.
Please tell me you've tried this.
That's going to bring us to the end of this. No. Do we have anything else in notes that you need that you want to cover?
No, I think we really hit everything that I really wanted to mention. I think that I mean, I did want to mention that I think probably the favorite person that popped up for me was Mr. Franz. But I mean, I didn't want to say anything about it. Just I kind of like it. You know?
I did like how I didn't talk about. I like how it wasn't specifically every chapter, but almost every chapter there was a person or couple that he met that kind of signified that point in life, and it was just interesting to see how that progressed and how it was like it went from his new parents to then meeting. I think Wayne was like you pointed. Vince Vaughn did a great job playing that character, but it was the perfect adolescent friend where you do stupid shit together, you learn from them, but they're also just pretty immature. And it's like so he learned from Wayne and then went on, and then he met the Danish couple, which is like another, like, I think in adolescence you meet friends like that are just kind of goofy and weird, and you have fun with, and then you move on. And then like in adulthood he ended up meeting Tracy then, and then in family, I'm sorry, that was actually in family then. Yeah, returning to the parents, which I think like that's like almost it's interesting that like that character's life kind of, mimicked what a full life is to a certain extent, even though it was so short and literally, not a full life. And I think that was kind of the point, is that his life was cut short, but it was like, it had the arc of like, being raised, quote unquote, by these parents. Even like I think they did that well with the scene of like them teaching him even what a leather tramp is and stuff like that, like learning that lifestyle. So it's like they played that parent role well. And then he left from their nest and went and had another adventure, and then came back and met with them again, which is like very often what happens in people's life arcs. So yeah, I think it was just really cool. It was an interesting way they told that story, and interesting use of characters. And then of course, then in family, meeting the grandfather character Ron.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it, but that is true. I mean, there really was something to signify each of the things, and I mean, I didn't really recognize that in the midst of the film. But now that I think about it, it really was a really cool like idea, way to put it together, a really good theme.
Yeah, I think it was just like almost like, I hate to use the term, but like almost masterful storytelling. Like there's a way where you can just tell a story, but then there's like the meta organizing of the story to another level that is like, oh shit, I appreciate even beyond the story, just the way the story is even organized and told is very interesting to me. I think it's cool. Before we do favorite line, did you pick a movie for next week yet?
Yeah.
Sweet.
I think we're ready for it.
Oh no,
I think we should do Tropic Thunder.
Oh, I am so ready for it. Okay.
I think
I'm so pumped.
It's gonna be a challenge.
I haven't seen that movie in years.
It's been a little while for me. It's been at least 6 or 7 years.
What movie was? What year was that? That was 2008. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a while because I haven't seen it for I can't remember the last time I saw it, honestly. Like I'm giving a rough estimate, but yeah, that was talking about Tropic Thunder in 2020 will be a challenge. I'm ready for it.
I'm excited for that. That'll be fun. Okay, sweet. So next week will be Tropic Thunder. That'll be fun, guys. So watch Tropic Thunder. Tune in for that, and let's bust out our favorite lines. What is your favorite line from Into the Wild?
Oh, it's a long one.
Do you want me to go first then? If yours is a long one.
Yeah, sure. Go
okay,
ahead.
all right. Mine's a short one. I think it's a good one though. I think it was deep, and it struck me in a way that I thought it was a great line. Some people feel like they don't deserve love. They walk away quietly into empty spaces, trying to close the gaps of the past. He said that about Jan, and it was like, I forget how. What did Rainey say?
I almost picked that one.
Really?
He said something about him being like wicked insightful, or like really, really like insightful.
Yeah, he was like, dude, that's pretty insightful. He's like, Jesus, you aren't Jesus, are you?
Yeah, he's like, why don't you walk on some water walk over to her on some water and bring her back to me or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, mine's pretty long. I spent most of my life in the Army. New Year's Eve, 1957, I was stationed in Okinawa. My wife and son were here in the States, just driving down the road, and some fellow who'd had too much to drink plowed right into them. Killed them both. Now, you might think the last thing I would do in the world is go to the whiskey. But at the time, it felt like the only thing I could do. And I did it hard. But pretty soon I realized I wasn't doing my wife and son any good warning them with the bottle. So I pulled myself together, and I quit drinking. Cold turkey. So since all that, this is pretty much me.
That was a good one too, man. Honestly, yeah, if I had the balls to do a monologue that long, I probably would have picked that one because I really liked that moment too, man. Good job, dude. Great.
Doing like the nursing home old man impression for that long was really hard.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't. But guys, that is going to bring us to the end of another episode of the Metacast Movie Show. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the conversation, hit the like button, subscribe to keep up to date, and comment below and tell us how you felt about Into the Wild. And if you want to further keep up to date with the show or even be a guest on a future episode, you can join our Discord. The link is in the description down below. And we'll be live next week, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylerTV. And again, we'll be talking about Tropic Thunder next week. So thanks everyone for listening, and I hope you all have a great week.